You are tuned into CT 169 Strong,
the one place where you get the rest of the story.
In a February 11, 2023 press release, a recently formed coalition calling itself Growing Together Connecticut released a poll claiming that Connecticut registered voters support zoning reforms to advance equitable housing.
This dubious research was reported by very few online and, so far, no legitimate media outlets. For this reason, we reluctantly share some of its results with you, with no intention of, thereby, legitimizing it, its methods, its results, or the organizations behind it.
Their research company, Embold Research, reports that the so-called survey was conducted between January 23 and 30 of 2023, among a sample of 2,562 Connecticut registered voters, or 0.1%, of Connecticut's 2.4 million registered voters. The sample was self-selected through, quote, targeted advertising, on Facebook and Instagram, and messages texted to cell phones, by a company calling itself Switchboard, which describes itself as a powerful, easy-to-use, supporter texting for Democrats and other progressives campaigns of any size. And hosted online by SurveyMonkey.
One evaluating the survey's validity might ask, how was the survey sponsor identified? And what purpose given to recruits to participate in the survey? What incentives were offered to participate in and to complete the survey, and what was the completion rate? What we do know is that the survey, by online standards, was lengthy.
With 29 questions asked. Typically, by the time a survey of this length gets to question 20, respondent fatigue and defection sets in. But it is on question number 20 that the sponsors are now hanging their hat.
A single questioned, cherry-picked, out of 29 questions, near the end of the survey. Here is that question. Which statement comes closer to describing your opinion? When a town won't act to make housing affordable, the state should step in so Connecticut doesn't get too expensive, and conversely, housing is a purely local issue that towns should make whatever decisions they want. This is a loaded question that forces the respondent to assume the worst possible policies of the fictitious town or towns regarding an issue over which towns have little control. More straightforward questions reveal much more nuanced opinions.
What are the most important issues facing Connecticut? Respondents could pick up to 3. These are the top 10 of 23. And number 4, with just 28% of respondents indicating it was one of their top 3 concerns, was the cost, or lack of housing. Taxes, energy costs, and inflation outpull housing by significant margins even among this sample. What kinds of investments are most needed in respondents' communities? These are the top 10 of 17 choices. Respondents could pick as many as they think apply. Increasing housing subsidies for low-income households ranked 9th, well behind infrastructure, crime, economy, healthcare, education, and slightly below homelessness and poverty.
But how would respondents address the cost of housing? By providing housing that's affordable to middle-income residents as number 1 by far. Followed by starter homes, then by subsidized housing for low and middle-income residents. The fallacy of that question is that middle-income residents don't qualify for subsidized housing. In fact, it is middle-income residents who live in 830G developments with so-called affordable income restricted units, who subsidize those restricted units with offsetting higher market rate pricing. Single-family housing is preferable to multi-family housing, transit-oriented development, or accessory dwelling units in that order.
Asked where more housing is most needed, only 42% said everywhere. What types of communities, middle and low-income communities, were much preferred over high-income communities? Cities, followed by suburban and rural communities. The second least popular place, just above high-income communities, is my community at just 12%.
This new coalition calls itself Growing Connecticut Together, but its steering committee, and small army of partners, wants you to believe that Connecticut towns are somehow to blame for the high cost of housing. It couldn't possibly be taxes, inflation, interest rates, or a host of government policies and economic factors. Poverty vultures want to blame systemic racism and exclusionary zoning for the ills that have been the scourge of people living in poverty since time immemorial. They know neutralizing local zoning authority will not ease the plight of the poor, so much as it delights their billionaire real estate benefactors.
But it is those billionaire developers where respondents place a large part of the blame for the high cost of shelter in Connecticut. Once again, the survey conflates subsidies for low and middle-income residents, when middle-income residents don't qualify for subsidies. Twice as many respondents blame landlords as do zoning regulations, 63% to 31%. And for many, the real culprits weren't listed, such as taxes, energy and transportation costs, inflation and labor. This research is the product of an unrepresentative sample of just 0.1% of Connecticut voters, and is biased by self-selection through Facebook and Instagram advertising, and a self-described partisan and progressive text messaging service. It relies heavily on one loaded question to create a false perception that voters want state intervention in housing and in local zoning decisions. Dig deeper and the results tell a different story. Housing is a low voter priority for the state behind taxes, energy, and inflation. While affordable housing is important, the priority should be for middle-income households, located in cities, and in middle-income communities. Not in high-income communities by a 6-to-1 margin, or in my community. High housing costs are blamed on landlords, not zoning regulations by a 2-to-1 margin. CT 169 Strong digs deeper.
So, now, you know the rest of the story. You can learn more at ct169strong.org, and you are invited to contribute, using the credit card services link in the description below. CT 169 Strong has no paid staff, and all of its officers and directors are strictly volunteers, so 100% of all contributions cover out-of-pocket advocacy and communications expenses. CT 169 Strong is not a 501c3, so contributions are not tax deductible. Thank you.